Break before our keynote. Our next presenter will be starting a little bit early, so we'll have a short break after her presentation. Rebecca Goff. Rebecca Goff is the Executive Director of Native Teaching Aids. Her inspiration stuck while she was attending the University of Montana for her master's in linguistics. She was deeply moved when she witnessed what a language immersion school can accomplish. She also saw firsthand the many challenges faced by those who wish to help revitalize their language, and how often it is necessary for them to create teaching materials. Native Teaching Aid's mission is to make native language learning tools for language and culture as available and common as those for other languages such as Spanish and French. In 2013, combining her linguistics degree with her husband's 18 years on online software development and design experience, she founded Native Teaching Aids. Their goal is not only to create on and offline learning tools for Native communities that are fun and educational, but also to create tools that empower and grow the community. Quick story on Rebecca, how we met. My first year in school here, she was just finishing her master's in the linguistics department, and she approached me to do a short story. And I'm not very technically advanced, so I drew up a little short story, and she took that and then recorded the words of that story. And I was amazed to see that come to life on an iPad, and it made me a true believer in using technology to push the language efforts forward. So we're really thankful to have her be a part of our club and have her present today. So here she is, Rebecca Goff.
Hi, like Jesse said, my name is Rebecca Goff. The name of my talk, which will come up in a second here, is called Board Games, Filling the Gap. So this is my talk. I'm going to go into first about what my company does, which Jesse kind of explained in my introduction, and then kind of some of the technology work we've been doing, and then talk about why board games, tabletop games, card games is a great additive into the technology that's coming out right now, as well as the classroom. So that's kind of what we're doing. As Jesse said, the mission of my company, which is Native Teaching Aids, is to make learning materials available for all Indigenous languages. Right now we're focusing on just the United States and Canada, but I've also been contacted from other areas, so it might be expanding a little bit. So we create physical and online teaching materials for Native American languages specifically right now. And this started, as Jesse was saying, during my master's degree with linguistics at the University of Montana. And in there, my first year there, I joined the Blackfoot Language Group, where we were part of the AmeriCorps program. And in that, we created a couple of projects, and one was an animated storybook. This is kind of a picture, it's the video, but this is kind of a picture of it. This was the second one we did, where we worked directly with the Cutswood students. They are the voices of the animals. This is actually on YouTube, where you can Google it. If you look up Ponica and Friends, you can view this. It's a cute little 2-minute video about an animal meeting friends along the way. But so we did that, and then what I realized when I was up there working with the students, working with the teachers, that a lot of materials aren't always available out there. Teachers do a lot of work teaching, and sometimes they don't always have a lot of resources available to them. So I thought, what if I just created a company where more resources would be made available, and making that a reality for a lot of people. So I established Native Teaching Aids 2 years ago in 2013. So I'm a baby of a company. But we've done a lot since then. I'm going to talk about technology right now. What we've created, this was kind of an inspiration when we did a project with Mike LaFramboise that he talked about a little bit earlier. What we created was called a Native American Culture Archive. The idea behind this is that everything is interconnected. Everything works together in a cohesive unit. So you have the language archive, which houses things like a dictionary. It'll house the words, the audio, images, video, any multimedia aspect that you want to attach to your language. Also a culture center, so that could be songs, stories, dances, movies, videos, multitude of images, and like an encyclopedia, I guess, is the best way to put it. And then lesson management systems, those are the online lesson systems that everyone has been using. Those would be culture lessons or even language lesson systems. And then culture maps. And these, what we did, this is a really good example, what we did is we worked with the Blackfeet tribe, and the signs that just went up early this year, I think, or late last year, I can't remember, but the signs that have the Blackfeet name where you're in like East Glacier and it has Omakoisis, is that right? No, I totally said that wrong. Anyway, so has these signs that are actually in Blackfeet and have the original names to them. We also created with, working with them, a geo mapping location. So kind of like Google Maps, you can search for an area. It'll give you directions to that place. It has videos about it, or it has language lessons. Also has like links about it, images, everything. And it's totally user friendly, so anybody can go in, or anyone who's access can go in and add to all of these things. So as you can see, they're kind of interlapping right here, like a Venn diagram, and that's because they all work together. So if you change a word or a phrase in one area, it changes in the other. And so everything is kind of interconnected in that. Through this core area, that's where you get to start working on, where you can start building. Anyone could go in and build apps, communication, technology, things like that. Here's a couple of things, some things I've already talked about. This is the map that's online right now. These two websites are actually the same. So if you can't spell Pekani Petapizan right away, then you could go to blackfootkeystone.com. That link's still, yep. So you can go there as well, and that'll take you to the same place. And that takes you to access to all of this right now. So this is the online dictionary, and that's split up into morphemes, affixes, phrases, words. If you're searching for a word, you can view sample phrases that are inside of it. That's an ongoing process, an ongoing project with Mike LaFramboise at the Blackfeet Community College. Then this is the language lesson system. Right now there are 15 lessons on there that are interactive. And the IEFA program that Mike was also talking about earlier is on there and accessible to everybody. So inside of these, we customize these lessons to what the Blackfeet Community College wanted, how they wanted to show it, how they wanted to be able to view it. They are available not as apps, but they are mobile capable, so you'll be able to view them on your mobile device. But we're hoping to be able to make them into apps soon. And then this is the map, and that's also available on there as well. I will wait. I see people copying it down. Do you guys have any questions so far? Yeah.
Can you make that slideshow available to us so that we can?
This?
The slideshow, like that other one where you have the Venn diagrams.
Oh.
I see it real well, and I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Yes. I can do that. You can also go onto my website, nativeteachingaids.com, and that has tutorial videos as well as images. But if you don't, I can also send you, I can give you my card, and I can send you things. All right. Whoops. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm sorry. I guess I could move forward while people are doing this. So, technology is something that we're all working towards. It's the next thing that's coming. It's what's now. It's what's here. But at the same time, how can we incorporate what's going on in front of the computer or tablets inside of the classroom and bring that home? We were thinking about this a long time. My husband and I, Jesse was saying, he has 20 years of web design development and software development behind him. I'm a linguist. and so how do we, bridge that gap? How do we bring it home? And the other thing that my husband and I love doing is playing board games. We've done this a long time. I grew up as family game night. That was a big thing with my family. And then we started looking at German-based board games because they were funner and they kind of get off of Monopoly. They're a little bit, I just like them better. I don't really have a strong reason why. So we thought, what about tabletop games to teach language, culture, and history? Can this be done? Can we do it? Because we were thinking, why From immersion schools, a lot of times what I was hearing from some teachers was that the students are learning the language. That's really great. But what happens when they go home? Not every student is what somebody told me as a traditional house. Not everyone has a native speaker available to them. Sometimes the parents aren't native speakers. And the parents want to learn just as badly as the kids do as well. Also in public schools, like Dustin was saying, hopefully his name right, that a lot of times history is taught from the colonial perspective. I know when I was in school, like when I grew up in Minnesota, and I don't know if any of you guys know about the Sioux City Massacre. Okay. The way I was taught about it was from the soldiers' perspective. You know, they were invading, they were the bad guys. And I have since learned many things that make that contrary to the case. But that's how I was taught. And also Indigenous language and culture inside of public schools, there's either very little of it. I remember we had an Indigenous Day one day when I was 8, and it was an Indigenous gentleman talking to us, but I cannot tell you what he was talking about, what he was from, anything. I just remember him saying something about the Blackfoot, and that's it. And that was in Minnesota. But so this is a problem. How can we solve this? So one idea I was coming up with, tabletop games can provide an atmosphere to speak in the language through the use of conversation cards. And this, I brought samples of some games we were working on right now, and so if anyone wants to see this, I'll be having them out for everyone to look at. They also are, of course, interactive because you're talking to each other. You're in this conversation. You're working together through that. And then it's a multi-learning educational tool. So not only would you be learning the language, but maybe you're also learning about culture. Maybe you're learning about the history behind it. Maybe you're learning things like economics, supply and demand. We have a game that does that just because that's the way the game is played. And you're not actually thinking, hey, I'm learning economics right now, that's boring. So that's good. And also some games, like our history games, you're learning about critical thinking as well, because you don't need to know history to play our history games. It's also an alternative when technology is not available or maybe it's not wanted. When I went to the National Indian Education Association conference last 2 weeks ago in Portland, and while I was there, I had a lot of people come from Alaska, and they were coming up to me and talking to me, and then, they were telling me that sometimes there's no technology in some of the schools. It's just not there. And they looked at the games and were like, this is an amazing opportunity for us to incorporate something else inside to the schools. That it doesn't always have to be technology. Some people don't have funding for it. You know, I mean, just all of these things when games are a lot less expensive. And then, of course, this would be time spent with friends and family on a table, hanging out, and you're off of technology. So it's a community aspect instead of a solo activity. So some of the games we've been working on, flashcards and a memory game. The flashcards and the memory game, actually all of these have a phonetic and dictionary spelling. A lot of these right now we're working on in Blackfeet. That's just because it's the first language I started working in. And so the phonetic pronunciations, the idea behind those is that you wouldn't need access to a native speaker all the time with you. You'd be able to utilize the cards and pronounce the words. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. There's also a lightning game, which is a fast-paced matching game. Elk in the House, which we're going to adjust a little bit. Thanks to our work with the Salish right now, where we're going to use animals, more animals, like maybe there's a moose in your toilet, or like crazy things like that. Because we think the sillier this game could be, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to remember. Also, maybe it won't be about rooms in the house. Maybe it'll be more about the objects inside of the house, because that might be a little bit more traditional. Also, we've made Indigenous history regions for every region, from the Arctic down to Mesoamerica. These games the regional games was done by research that I researched myself. So that was doing research with authors that were Indigenous, or when I read the foreword, they did the work, they did the research, they talked to elders, things like that. Also a lot of tribal websites I used as well, tribal council websites. So through that, though, still, people have found errors, and that was kind of my reason why I did that. I started that way, because it was like, you have to start somewhere, and I want corrections. Like, I have a woman came up to me while I was at the NIEA, and she's like, "Can I edit your Arctic?" And then I hugged her, and I gave her a copy. It was like, "Yes, please, edit my versions. Tell me what's wrong. Let's get these as accurate as possible." Because what is important, like Dustin was saying, is that we need to tell this history from the Indigenous perspective. We all know what the colonial perspective is, and that's cool. Let's learn the other way. And so that's kind of what I was thinking. We're also coming out with tribal editions. Right now, the Little Shell version is up for sale. That just got travel approval last Saturday. That gained travel approval. The Salish is coming soon. That it just has a few more corrections, and then that will also be available. The Blackfoot, I'm working with the Kainai Culture Committee. I think that's his title. Yes. So I'm working with him on making the language games more accurate, as well as a Kainai history version. And the Blackfeet history version, I'm just working with many different people to get that as accurate as possible. So those are coming soon. And then we also have a few more language games coming up, like Picking Berries is a very heavy trade-based language game where you have to trade in order to win the game, and then you have conversation cards where you're trading inside the language and working through it. And that you'll see in a second more about that. And we also are coming up with other games, a story-based game where you're speaking in the language, and as well as a collaborative game with the Ani about the water rights. And you have to work together in order to solve the issues. If you lose any of the issues, the game is lost. If you don't work together, you can lose the game. So it's basically players against the game. Many ways to lose, one way to win. And so that's that one. The way we do this is the games are concocted through collaboration with educators, travel groups, interested parties, and communities. And through this, many agreements happen. The language stays with the tribe. We don't claim anything towards the language. That and the history and the culture stay with the tribe. That's why when I said the Little Shell game has tribal approval, it's because we have an understanding. They gain a certain amount for every game that gets sold, and then we create more games based off of that. And so this is just a benefit to be able to create more materials, and culture and history and language is getting taught at the same time. So this is just a more inexpensive way to get this going. They're all designed in Adobe Suite, and then we print and manufacture in-house, and I really mean in-house. And so the reason why we decided to do that was we realized we went to a lot of different printing companies, and we realized that to even start talking to them, we needed to do 10,000 of the same game, and that's not always going to happen. And we wanted to be able to have a great variety so we could sell as many as possible and different kinds as possible, and not be stuck by this rigid framework that companies would put us in. So now we print and make our own games, which is fun. I've learned a lot. That's quite a challenge, I say. So I'm going to talk a lot about the collaboration process. I really feel, especially with my work here at the University of Montana, getting my master's degree, that I learned a lot about how important collaboration is with other parties. So what we start to do with the games is we have meetings, and we introduce games that have already been developed, that we're already working on, make a lot of changes to them, and then reproduce them. We discuss the best way to develop the games to target their language and culture, and then possibly sometimes we even create new games to better suit the community. That's how the Take Action game came out. There's another game with the Salish that we're coming out with too that better suits what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to go with that. We will also work with teachers to create a valid game for the classroom. So we would take the game to the teacher, ask them, is this a game you would use? They'll either say yes or no, but they might even say like, yeah, but what if it did this instead? And so we work with teachers as well, and also working with speakers to maintain the accuracy of the language. Image work we do a lot with too, and the phonetic pronunciations, or audio mini apps. And this is something I was getting to. Not every language I have learned can be phonetically pronounced without changing the entire writing system. And so we're coming up with a solution to that, which is listening is the best way to learn. Hearing the audio, being able to see an image in front of you. And so we're creating audio mini apps where you have the game, you can download an app, maybe if you don't have access to online work again, or if you don't have a phone. We also have ideas about MP3 downloads, CDs, anything that makes it possible for you to be able to hear the audio being played. And that is something that would accompany every game as well. So also play testing. So then after all this is done, the game has its prototype, we play test it, either with a community, a bunch of people, one-on-one, however we work. This is an embarrassing video of me and my husband that is also online, where him and I are trying, this is for the first time, this is a very old version of Picking Berries, where we're trying to see, can you actually play a game inside of a language that you've never spoken before and learn? And so this is it was a 2-hour video cut down to 2 minutes. I promise you it's only 2 minutes long. So in this game, we're talking back and forth using conversation cards. That's kind of what these green cards are. This is an older, like I said, this is like a 1.0 version of this game. And all we're doing is we're speaking in the trade language. My husband had never spoken in Blackfoot before. He'd actually never spoken in a native, another language before besides English. So for 2 hours, he was immersed inside of Blackfoot. And he learned as he was going on. He said, like, you know, I was inside the language. I learned a lot. I stopped looking at my cards sometimes because then I just knew. And that's kind of when we realized this is a great idea. This will work. This can happen. And so I will, like, if you guys ever, if anyone goes and looks at this, it's on YouTube or Vimeo. We're not native speakers, and I know our pronunciations are wrong. This was just to show that this is something that can work, and we can do it. So just, that's my disclaimer. I like to tell everybody. So, did I talk really fast? No, I'm good. All right, so what I'm trying to say is that inside of a classroom, there are many different ways to teach. And that works. And then we have technology like online lessons, apps. So much is available, so many opportunities are available for that to be able to get built. So we take the classroom plus technology, and then we add the incorporation of having these students take games home with them to teach their families, to play with their friends. This is one way I was thinking that we could actually spread the language, spread culture, spread history, start teaching each other how more about what history should really be taught and the way it should be taught. And that, does anyone have any questions? I'm pretty much done. Yes, Cheney?
When you're talking about games going home, how difficult is it for, what would the learning process be for the parents to know how to play it? Could the kid just take the game home and start playing it, or would it be
Probably depending on the age level of the child or the student. I mean, a college student, yeah, I would say, of course they could. A younger kid, I'm not sure. That's not something we've tested before. It's a theory I have. But one thing that we are going to do is make online tutorials. And so that's going to be something, now that I'm back and I'm slowing down, that's something I'm working on this week. So in this coming week, there's going to be an online tutorial for every game that we've created. That'll be a simple format, so parents could be like, oh, how do I play this game with my kid as he's trying to teach me? Because that could go one way or the other, depending on, 8-year-old trying to teach me a game. I know it's not always gone well. So yeah, that's a great question. Were you going to add to that, Brandon? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, I do have samples if anyone wants to take a look at them. I did bring them with me after Ophelia's talk. And I think that's all I got. Thank you, guys.